All right. Welcome back to another episode of Witty Banter. Your hosts Nabil, Daniel, and Anika are here, and we're joined by our special guest, Afshan Shahid, straight from the United Kingdoms. Welcome to the program. And
Hello.
sorry to our listeners and our viewers for the delay. We had some technical difficulties, but we are live now. Um, so let's see. How do we want to start today's conversation? Maybe. Um, Afshan, if you want to uh, talk a little bit about your current business endeavors and what you do for those
Well,
who don't know.
I'm a business entrepreneur, and I've been doing lots of little businesses throughout my life now and then. But now, recently, about 5 years ago, I started up a small boutique in London, and I cater for the British Asian community. And I have started doing my own manufacturing. At the same time, I'm training. So I've got two or three different things going on at one time.
Hmm.
So previously, were purchasing from a manufacturer in Pakistan, or what was the process previous to
And
what you have now?
no, actually, I was buying brand names, and also at the same time, I was having shirts and trousers made by different tailors from different cities. And I realized that that was something that was more selling more than the brands, and it was less competitive because uh, I had my own set of clothes which people really liked.
And do
And
you?
so yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. Do you sell locally only, or do you also sell online?
Well, I've got my website set up, and I've sold through WhatsApp and Facebook.
Mm.
But now the new website is going to be selling clothes for all over Europe, particularly, but England definitely. And so that's where it's what you call it, industry is going anyway. It's all about online selling now, isn't it?
All right. And actually, I'm curious. So I'm curious about what your target market or target audience is. And I'm thinking of some analogy or similarity between like how, at least in the United Kingdom, how uh, Indian and South Asian cuisine is very popular. And I think there was some statistic that said chicken tikka masala is the most famous
Oh,
dish in the
yeah.
United Kingdom, and I'm curious, have you noticed a an appeal in your local region to like Southeast Asian fabrics
South.
and
Well,
dress? South Asian.
the area in
Yes,
Luton. Oh, I was just gonna say the area in Luton is Southeast Asian mostly, right? Or like the local population where your store
yes,
is.
it is
Yeah.
basically, yes, it is. It's an immigrant area, and we have a lot of Pakistanis and Bangladeshi Indians all over the world, wherever immigrants come from. And it's because it's close proximity to London. It's only about a half hour, 20-minute train ride into central London. So it's very popular for a lot of people to live there. And also, I mean, my target market is the British Asian community. And it's also a lot about modest wearing, but it's also the professional woman who's working in a multicultural environment. And they need to keep hold of what their culture and religion or beliefs allow them to wear. And so they're looking for clothes that make them feel comfortable wherever they are working. So most of my clothes are casual wear or formal wear, less of a wedding wear and the Bollywood style of clothing,
Hmm.
more of a sort of a mixture, a fusion between the East and West.
Mm. And
So I have a question.
hmm
Um, uh, Tell us a bit about what interested you about clothes. Because on a personal level, you're not into clothing.
It's not the clothing, it was just because I'm a businesswoman. and I kind of fell into it. I mean, all women, I would imagine all women are interested in clothes. People generally like, wearing clothes.
I like clothes.
Yeah. We would hope they like wearing clothes.
I'm
Not
a
nudist,
nudist.
yeah.
Unless you're a nudist.
It's a necessity. It's just like food.
Mhm.
We got to have it. We got to buy it. The whole thing was that I needed, because I knew that it's a market which I mean, as a woman, I'm always been interested in different type of clothes, and there's always a designing aspect of it as well. I like anything creative um, but it has to be comfortable wearing. So I did go into a bit of health and beauty products as well, and for a short time. And then I went and thought maybe clothes was a better option. And I saw there was very few clothes in that area which would cater for that market. They had to travel into London, and we did have shops there, but there was sort of most of it was wedding wear and events and festival wear, not the ones that you generally wear day to day wearing.
And before you had,
That's
I was just gonna ask, before you had the shop, were you like renting out spaces for the day, or what was like, or did you just go straight to the shop from
I
where you
actually
started?
went straight into the shop.
Oh,
I
okay.
went into the market and I saw that there were clothes shops, but they didn't want the clothes shops that we see generally in and around Pakistan.
Mm.
And I knew that generally the community would travel to Pakistan and go and do the shopping there and bring over clothes which they were comfortable wearing. At
Mm-hmm.
the same time, when you go to Pakistan, the weather there is very different to what it is in the UK. We have a very long winter and a very short summer, and it's total opposite in Pakistan. So the clothing that was required was more of a warm clothing. Of course, there's the color differences, and what is worn in spring and summer is not necessarily worn in winter color-wise. So there were lots of things that I knew that there was a niche there which I could, um, uh, cater to.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I'm curious about the design process. I guess what is your design process? Do you just do you sketch stuff out on paper? Do you use software?
Or do you have designers?
Yeah.
No, actually, my customers are my designers.
Mm.
And I'm very proud of the fact that uh, it's the clothes are designed by women, so made by women, sold by women, and worn by women. And I'm very much in favor of picking up the designs, as you were saying. My customers come back and tell me what they like and what they would want to wear, and so I incorporate that. It's not one single process. I'm not the only designer. I've got, the girls and who work for me or work with me. They also come back with, this style looks good. People were asking about this, and we have a very quick turnover. So quickly we design. Okay, this is going to before the season ends or in the next season, we've got to get this going.
Mm.
And then, of course, once we take it into Pakistan, then the girls who do the embellishment, who we work with, who buy the material, I discuss with all of them. So it's not one single person designing those clothes. It's a group of people, right from the buyer to the manufacturer.
Mm.
Interesting.
Has your sister ordered anything, or
Which
is she?
sister? Oh, the one
Well,
next to you?
yeah.
Actually, I don't. I try not to get the family involved.
Mm.
If they like it, of course, they're always welcome to buy it. But I mean, if she wants something, she can easily buy it. But I think she is more
I have
Western
actually.
clothing. Yes, she has. But she
Oh,
wears mostly Western clothing anyway.
right.
And everybody wants to wear, especially in the working environment, they want to wear the clothes they feel comfortable in.
Mm.
So that's why if that's what if she wears it for just, generally, she's welcome to order as much as she wants.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would like you to talk about
Hmm.
is your more recent endeavor in creating a training environment.
Yes. Now, when I set up my business, the biggest issue I had was that I didn't have uh, the type of. I set up actually a manufacturing unit. I call it my designing and manufacturing company.
Mm.
And most of the people I hired were men. And when we started working on it, I wanted the women's aspect of it, and I wanted women more involved. And for that, I started recruiting from the area, and it was basically a house which belonged, my father had built and was totally left empty for years. So I redid the whole house and set it up as a vocational training school as well as a manufacturing unit. And
Mm.
it's all in-house training that goes on there. And I got about 20 plus girls to start off with, where I started training them on how to actually embellish the products once the basic sewing had been done. And then I started training them how to use industrial machines. And as we went along, we got them more and more involved. Now, at this point, I've got two separate departments. One is for casual wear and one is for trousers. Casual wear tops or shirts. And then we've got the embellishment we started off originally. This was about a year ago. But how I trained the girls, because I live in the UK and the girls are in Pakistan. And these girls are semi-literate. I don't think they're studied more than the fifth grade. It's from third grade to fifth grade.
Mm.
A few of the girls are more educated. So I got them working in teams where they taught each other how to a new type of skills, be it pattern making, cutting, and work with beads, making tassels. All these things I would send them tutorials on YouTube, and then I'd make groups groups of 5 girls will sit together, and they would see just by looking at how they could work out how certain things had to be done in the project. They would teach each other. So we had one girl who would pick up, who was quick to pick up, and they just looked at what was happening. They didn't have to actually read about it or study it.
Right.
And so they just taught each other how to use machines and how to use the overlocking machine
And
and so on. So, I mean, that's how we got the whole unit set up.
And that's interesting that you mentioned the YouTube videos because I feel that that's the kind of future of learning in general, but that's how I am teaching myself to program is YouTube tutorials. Um, did you find are they able to then once they pick up some stuff on YouTube, do they start browsing YouTube now and kind of doing the finding of different tutorials themselves?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Hmm.
And now I just have to send pictures, and I said, tell them, give them words, and they copy the words using computers. Now, these were village girls who worked in fields or were used as domestic servants to use in different houses.
Hmm.
And I realized that the girls I recruit, I know there's a very small amount of time because the culture there is such that by around about the age of 10 or 12, the girls are taken home from school, either because their parents can't afford to teach them, or they can't. They want them to look after their brothers and sisters and do the housework, and so the parents, both their mothers, can go out and work in the field. It's because of poverty that they're stuck in such a sort of way that they can't go on for further education. Now, the government schools do good vocational training, but they say you got to have a minimum of a matriculation, which is about a high school.
Hmm.
These girls are not really educated in that level. So I found out that, I mean, they're just as intelligent as anybody else. So they can learn skills and they can earn a living. And they usually around about the age of 20, 18, 20, they will get married. And then another circle will start where they will have kids, and then after they've got 4 or 5 kids, they will need more money, and then they don't know how to earn it. So in this way, they've learned how to. I've guided them through the fact that you can learn using technology, and at the same time, they've learned how to use machines. And also, the further in future, I'm thinking of getting them to set up their own businesses. And I've had people say to me, especially the men who work there, what's the point in teaching these girls? They're going to get married and move away to some other place. I said, I don't really mind as long as I've got workers coming in, because every semester, if I have 20 girls coming in, and I've got a list of hundreds of girls whose names have been put down, I just cannot keep them in my, I don't have the room or the capacity for keeping so many girls or teaching them.
Right.
So I've limited it to about 20 girls per 3 months. And so once they're trained, some of them, maybe a third I will employ to work in my factory. A third of them will probably move on, get married, have their own work from home. And if they've got both things, the technology plus the skills, I think they can earn a living. They don't have to work in fields. They will start working from home and, making whatever businesses wherever they are. And also at the same time, the ones who are working in industry can find out, because the area that we are in, Faisalabad, that's the Manchester of Pakistan, where all the textile industry
So
is
for
set up.
the American audience, that means it's industrial.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Like
industrial
Detroit.
area.
It's like,
And
well, what Detroit used to be anyway.
Yeah.
Well, not cars, but yeah.
And a quick,
Wherever
we,
they have.
we received a live question here from a Salma Tufail. She asks, what is the age group of the women working in your
I think you
organization?
said 18 to 20, right?
Well, she mentioned that that's when they'd
Oh.
get married and have kids.
Oh,
So I would imagine the age group is, I don't know,
no, 15, 12. I employ anybody 12 upwards.
12
So,
up.
but majority of the girls so far are roughly about 15 to 18. And so they're learning skills, and then of course I'll employ them once they've learned what, I see if they're capable of using machines, and of course using as a designing aspect of it. It's not just machines are using, because when we make a garment, we discuss it. What do you think? How it should be embellished? You should have put laces on, beads on, mirrors on, and what type of tassels do you think? What colors would look nice? And I've given them the freedom to select different type of embellishment material. And also at the same time, in between, they make fabric flowers, so they can carry on making things and learning things. And then we say, okay, now we can use that skill to complete this garment.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you've also been working with public education systems to connect in some way.
Yes, I've actually met up with quite a few different people in and around Pakistan to basically help me support my ongoing sort of procedures. But I've realized that there are plenty of vocational training schools around in Pakistan, and there's a mixture of them for men and for women, and different type of education. But I think that because I'm targeting at these girls who are totally uneducated, it's a different way of teaching them, which is not the normal, the government way. Government colleges and schools are teaching.
How long would you say, well, actually, before I ask my question, we have another question from Salma Tufail here. What is your source of funds for the training of these young girls? Do they get an allowance?
Yes, they get a pay which is double of what they would be earning in a field, and I pay them for the learning, because I realize that unless they do get that money coming in, they're not going to be learning, because it's because of poverty that they're working in fields or working in houses. So when I employ them, I say to them, as you're learning, this is your basic pay, and it is more than what they would be getting, usually double of what they're getting. After that, when I employ them, of course, they pay raises and they get what is the market pay that you get in that area.
Actually, that's interesting. I just made some connection. Maybe this is an already thought of idea, but in previous podcasts, we've talked about a universal basic income, and you've kind of established a basic income, but only if obviously you're learning with you. I wonder if that could be something on a more macro level, if that's how societies could accomplish the basic income, is by attaching it to something like education. Okay, you want a basic income? Well, you have to go like do this, that, and the other thing. What are your any thoughts on that? And this is just an open.
I think they already have that in Germany, or like
They
in the
pay
north,
you
to learn, like
Oh.
to go to high school, and yeah.
Interesting.
So I think that's already the case in some areas, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
have to double check that.
And then
Yes, but they do have apprenticeship here in the UK as well. But then again, it's when you've done your, say, your O levels or A levels. It's not for the totally uneducated. And that's the reason why in the underdeveloped countries there's so much poverty, is because so much stress is made on the education as academic education that though it's absolutely necessary, but when you're hungry and you're starving, it's not. It's money that you want for food and clothes, which you want immediately, not when you've done your 15, 20 years of education. So if they were paid as they were being educated, I think we would get more children in schools.
how long have you been working towards your this I guess business? How many years would you say? Like when did you
Well, I've
start?
been doing businesses throughout my, I think, last 20, 30 years. There's something been doing something throughout.
Okay.
Yeah, some projects, but this project, 5 years ago I started, and the vocational training school I set up a year ago.
Gotcha. And what during that 5-year process, what are some characteristics that you would say are necessary to keep going? Because I'm sure there's many times where it's like, oh no, like maybe this isn't gonna work, or things weren't turning out the way you expected them. What were some ways you kind of pushed forward or maybe pivoted to continue with your
I,
business?
well, I think of course, the younger generation definitely, because there's more of a sort of push with the younger generation. They're more enthusiastic about what they want to do. I think getting involved with youth is extremely important, and in all aspects. Even when I'm working here in England, I've got young people working with me, and I have got them sort of getting them involved in whatever I'm doing. And I always say that it's a teamwork. It's not one person. There's no way I can complete what I'm doing without the team of people that are working with me, be it the sales, be it my manufacturers, be it whatever. I mean, we work as a team. And there's no seniority or, they're junior or senior. It's everybody's equal. They've got to learn to do things, and we do it all together. I mean, if the floor needs sweeping, I will clean it. I won't tell somebody else to do it. And I always say that even in wherever they are, that if you see something needs doing and you can see it needs doing, please involve yourself. So it's not, when we started up the vocational training school, it was to do, it's what it's your school. It's for you that I'm doing it, and it's not me doing it. You've got to do it together. You've got to work out what things work and what don't work, and so it's like, because of the whole team working, it doesn't seem as if it's a chore, and you're not ordered around what to do. We never order around what to do, but yes, people who are lazy and not doing, they're not one of our team. We very easily and quickly sift out the people we know are just wasting our time.
Interesting.
I heard someone recently online talk about like millennials working, and he likes them because it's very easy to determine whether they're there to work hard, or they're very motivated.
Because they're honest about it?
Right away. He says like they're the easiest to work with because they're so easy to read.
Blatantly, if
like
they're
either-
lazy, it's very
but-
blatant.
Yeah, and if they're not, obviously they're very motivated to work.
Yeah, I guess I would be, well, I guess in my previous jobs, I try to be very upfront about like, what I'm up to within my role instead of like maybe, I don't know, other people might kind of paint a fancier picture of what they're up to. When your boss asks, "Hey, so how's this and that going?"
Yeah.
Sometimes you might say the way you explain is like
yeah.
more grander than like what it actually is.
Yeah.
I guess I try and make sure, even if it's something simple and it's that the answer would make it seem like, oh, it didn't seem like I put a lot of effort in. I'm just trying to.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of hard to BS because I would be the same way. It's like if I feel like there's things out of my control or I'm not working as well as I could be, I try to be self-aware with my manager and say like, okay, these are my weak points. Or if I think I'm actually doing well, then I'll highlight that in whatever review we have.
Right.
So are millennials changing the workplace as in soft skills? And maybe the question for our guest is do her young trainees act in the same way as millennials in the developed world?
Yes, I think they do. If like Nabil was just saying, that if you're aware of your weaknesses and your strengths, and you've got a task to do, you know what you can do and what you can't do. So I think it's the girls who I'm working with know definitely that who's good at what. And as I said before, that when somebody's better at something, they teach the person if they want to learn. If they don't want to learn, I mean, there's one example of a girl who wasn't very good at sewing or anything like that, but she's very good at tidying up and ironing. So she had the ironing job to do. So she would, she didn't mind doing that. And I said, but she won't finish her what work she's doing. She's not interested in the beadwork or whatever we're trying to tell her to do. So she knew that she didn't like doing it, and I talked to her and I said, why? And she said she wanted to tidy up. She's good at packing, she's good at labeling, she's good at ironing, and we need one of those. So kind of, if you find your own jobs and what you can do, you can do it. And I think that's what the new generation is very expert about. They know themselves. I'm pretty sure they do.
Right. Maybe also the how would you say, the labels you put on a job position are a bit more vague, but in a good way, in that the worker can, as you mentioned, if they know their strength, they can go apply that elsewhere. Whereas maybe traditionally, if you say, oh, this is my job title and I only do this thing, maybe that's changing for the better anyway.
No, we as I said, we work as a team. Like if there's a model, there's a girl who's a model, but we have lots of other girls who will show her how to model. So without saying it, and then there's a girl who's good at photography, but then when she shows her pictures and images, what she's taken, and people will look around and find out what's not right in it and what pose would have been better, or the lighting, coloring. So we kind of work together, and I do have titles for jobs because everybody needs a title. One person has to be the responsible one. But as I said, we give them titles, but it doesn't mean that the boundaries finish there. Right. They can, if somebody's doing, say, the inventory management, they will also do the packing when it comes to a rushed timeline. When we've got a cargo shipment going out and there's there are not enough girls finishing off the finishing of any garment, then we get all the girls involved in it and say, forget about the trousers, let's get this consignment out before you get on the trousers. So, I mean, everybody knows their boundaries.
Right.
Google has been implementing something similar where it's like when someone goes on leave, like maternity leave, or I don't know, they take a sabbatical or something like that, someone could apply for that position at Google to see how that position is for 3 months or 6 months or however many.
Interesting.
Just to see if that's something they're more interested in, or like kind of cross movement within the company.
Right. It's actually funny that you mentioned or the way you're describing the whole shipping out and maybe you have a rush shipment, because it very much reminded me of my previous job, where we were a server manufacturer, and I was part of the operations team, and then the kind of the would you say, the timeline or the chain is very similar. It's we have a product, now we're shipping it, and oh, these shipment are going to be delayed because of transit. We need to expedite the shipping to meet the customer's expectations. So I just thought it was interesting that it sounded very similar to my ear.
It's always good to give the longer day. If it's like 3 to 5 days, it'll take 5 days.
Setting ETAs. Yeah, you should ask me. I'm the buffer king.
It'll take anywhere between a week to a month. So a month.
My internal team says 1 week. It's gonna take 1 month.
And I do have. I mean, they're flexible enough that when I go, and I usually go and spend a month in Pakistan. And when I go and we set up the next season's production, so we've got to work. Say, for example, if I've got a spring, during winter, I went over and I knew I needed this spring collection completed. So when we're doing that, then they work double the time, and when they work double, we have a good time. I give them lots of nice things to eat. We have a party and we work as well. And Friday and Saturday, usually we have a Friday and Sunday off. But then when I'm there that month, nobody has any time off. So they kind of try and keep with it, because fashion industry is such that timing is extremely important. Before the spring comes in, we've got to get the spring collection on the racks. It's got to be there in the shop, and so before the season starts, so they know it's a rush timing. And with most things, but particularly this, it's a very seasonal business, like fruit and vegetables. It runs out very quickly. I mean, if it's not there, you're not going to get enough sales, and if you're not going to get enough sales, next year it will be out of fashion anyway.
Right. So I've noticed something interesting with the way companies market today. So as this is a podcast, I listen to a bunch of other podcasts, and a lot of companies will market or advertise their products through podcasts. So presumably they contact the podcast who has X amount of listeners, and they say, hey, I'd like for you to plug my product in the beginning of your program, and it costs X amount of dollars. Have you looked into, or are you kind of taking advantage of any sort of internet marketing things? Or are you
affiliate marketing?
Does that interest you? Do you think that would be an effective way to increase sales? Especially you mentioned it was seasonal. Maybe that could be something where I don't know, you.
Well, definitely. Once my website is up and running, because we're going to be selling from 3 different areas. Now, seeing the way we have sold, I mean, I'm particularly focusing from the British Asian community in that area. But if you go around England, UK, or you're in Europe, I have a lot of European customers who come in. But they come in because they're looking for that type of clothing. In the pipeline at the moment, I've got different websites set up for different. There's a different website for USA, there's a different one for the UK, and a different one for Europe, and a different one for Pakistan, because of the seasons, plus the clothing is slightly different in each area. And we definitely need marketing through the social media and through different forms of, say, podcast. There's a blog that I write, Afshi's blog. So, I mean, I've got that going.
Gotcha.
And it's, everything, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's right at the beginning stages of everything. So, yes, marketing online is definite.
I'm sure you get most of businesses word of mouth, maybe from previous customers referring to their friends and family, or do you see that a lot?
Yes. Yeah, actually that's how it goes. I mean, when it comes to clothes, it's got to be when people see them wearing it. When you go, they wear it at functions, wear it out. Just today, I had a customer coming, and she went to Canada to meet. She went to some, family, and she was saying all the clothes I was wearing, and they were saying, "When are you going to send it over? When will it be available on this side of the world?" And when our customers wear them, they get questions. But there is a slightly something about clothing that some people don't want to tell where they bought it because they feel that they'll be copied. So I have to be very particular that I don't make more than 12 items per design or style, so that there's no such thing as uniform. It's all, I don't make a large quantity. So that is one of my marketing
Actually, that's
tools.
a really good idea, I think, because it reminds me of this website called Mass Drop, and what they do is they reach out to manufacturers, typically for electronic goods, but they do other things, and they'll reach out to the manufacturers and say, hey, well, actually, before they reach out to manufacturers, they kind of ask their community online, like, hey, what are some products that you'd be interested in that maybe aren't for sale? I don't know how they know about them beforehand, but anyway, they'll gather that kind of interest, and then they'll reach out to the manufacturers and say, hey, we have these many people kind of ready to buy. Can you manufacture X amount of product? And then so they have these regular sales that happen where they know generally how many people are going to buy it, and maybe they'll order a bit more, but it's a limited time thing, and they don't they won't sell it again necessarily. But yeah, there is something to what would you say?
Customized
Or limited supply. That
Yes, limited. It's very limited.
adds some sort of value, just like how our podcast, we like small. We're a niche community, so our
Limited
value
amount of
increases
viewers.
as the viewers decrease.
We cap at 100 viewers.
But I
Once it
think
gets
it's
to 100.
also supposed to be environmentally responsible to have limited production
Yeah, that's probably
to
true.
avoid waste.
Only make
Yes,
what is needed.
Yes, we have less waste. I mean, we make sure that because of, again, it's seasonal, and it does take its very short amount of time to be making products, and financially, it's more difficult to um, uh, make smaller quantities because you can't keep the price low with smaller quantities. But then that it saves a lot of wastage. I don't have a lot of wastage, so I don't have any outlets and like big companies do have, because they need the outlets to get rid of the stuff which they've got left over.
Do you use is it AliExpress or
Alibaba?
there's a specific site on their website where they sell just like industrial goods, or I don't know if that's just for everything, but
I'm assuming not if it's like more boutique,
But
because those are more.
but I'm curious if there's like a one-stop shop where you get kind of industrial grade machines for sewing or something like that. Because I know like if you did a Google search on these kind of machines, obviously these aren't consumer products, so there isn't a lot of information out there sometimes. I'm curious if there's sort of ways you are able to research, industrial grade machines that you need for your business.
And this is, I know, an exciting part of your job.
Yes. Yes, I've actually bought, I started off very small, and I bought second-hand machines, and then I started buying new ones. Not that I had any problems with second-hand one, it's just because of the finances I had to get the second-hand ones first. But what I've realized is that there are machines which sometimes are totally unnecessary. I was looking for a bead attaching machine. It's something that you attach with staples onto clothes, and it's a automatic machine from China. It was costing a lot of money. So I went into Pakistan. I tried to find out there that there was a one which is a manual one, because my production is not that much, and we actually in the end had a machine which we redid. And it was a button making machine, which we had little parts that we redid, and I was very excited about that machine because we kind of made it ourselves, and we used things
Have you patented it?
No, we haven't patented it yet, but we used pipes from the gas, hose pipes and things like that to work out which which should be put onto the machine to hold the beads and so on. So we kind of manufactured that ourselves, and we've got about 3 machines which we are working with at the moment, and they worked out. Financially, they were good. They were cheap. I keep looking on machines, and I go through all type of different websites where they're auctioning machines. Because I'm looking for an embroidery machine at the moment, and I'll see. I mean, we can get them in Pakistan as well. So I mean, I do look through websites to see what is available, but it's not necessarily I'll buy it. I just want to see what's going on at the moment around the world.
I saw a coffee machine on Craigslist, and it was, I forget how much. I think it was like 8,000 or 10,000.
Holy moly!
But like the people had it advertised like, oh, we made this and we've won like a few awards for it. And it looked pretty good. But then
what kind of coffee machine?
What? It was a roaster. But the funny thing was, I went on Alibaba or AliExpress, and that same machine popped up for like 2,000, 3,000 from Amazon. Like, wow, these guys, like, it literally the same exact description too. They just like copied and pasted it onto Craigslist, which is like local sales in America.
I think they have Craigslist
do they have it
in
UK?
I think. I'm not sure.
Maybe not.
Alibaba? Yeah.
No, Craigslist.
Alibaba. Yes, we have Alibaba, and we have Craigslist.
Oh, they do. Okay.
And we have Gumtree, and then you've got there are lots of websites like that. You've got the auction websites as well.
Right.
I'm looking at them all the time, but then we've got the ones which are in this area. We've got on Facebook. We've got people have set up the sort of area-wise. In this area, this is available. So a lot of free things as well. But because my manufacturing is all in Pakistan, it's not. I mean, I look for information on these websites, but I would never buy it and take it across.
I see.
So we talked about millennials, but we now in this podcast have kind of a generational gap.
Yeah.
What do you think about our generation and what technology has added or subtracted from our abilities to be creative and professional?
Well, I like to think that I don't think there's any difference in just because you're from some previous generation that like you are any different. The technology.
We just saw the SNL skit on Alexa for the silver years. You should see it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there might be ways in which, like, for a younger generation, who grew up with technology, maybe, things might come more easily in a sense, but
Well, I will say, like, one thing that it helped do is kind of give more exposure to those with maybe more experience, and as well as made the ability to reinvent your career more easily. Like, where I feel like the previous model was maybe, like you were saying, stick with one job and you kind of work your way up.
right.
The internet allowed, I guess all generations to shift their career path or business path maybe more easily because they have the ability to learn things through YouTube and just websites in general.
Yeah.
So I would say, one, it created that aspect of job mobility, but also it allowed more experienced people to show their work.
Yeah, but I think across generations, as long as you have a willing mind to use and learn technology for your benefit, then, I mean, theoretically, it should be the same across.
But I wonder what our guest thinks. In her span of her experience, and you've always been involved with technology.
Yes, it's always fascinated me. It really depends on who wants to learn. I think if you're a continuous learner, technology, you can't do without it. And for the millennials, it's a sort of they've been brought up with it, so they continue using it as if it's like we use pencil and paper. And I don't know. I would say that it depends on person to person. I don't think it's generation to generation.
Mm.
I agree.
Do you think entrepreneurship became easier, or do you think it became harder because now you have more competition, or do you think it's pretty much the same as it's been?
I think it's much easier. I think it's much easier with the technology. Also, you get more ideas because it's opened up so many windows to different worlds. And I know that I can't survive without, in the internet. I feel as if once the internet goes down, and it usually happens in Pakistan where there's no electricity. And then you think, oh, look for something, and you've got these gadgets which keep you in contact with the rest of the world. Yeah. But it's I don't think we can do without the internet. Definitely there's a big advantage with that. It's be it entrepreneurs or whatever work you're doing. I don't think it's just as an entrepreneur. As any form of work, be it education, be it whatever, you can't kind of survive management, any type of management, administration work, communication.
So have any of the young women that you worked with given their perspective on the use of technology? Were they using it before?
I tell you what, they quite a few of them had phones. Now, if you can use a mobile phone, you kind of more or less have got into that where you can get the technology. And the girls who were using phones have got other girls interested in it. And now they've got the pocket money, or they've got the money they've got together. And I found it really interesting how these girls don't take collect all the money that we're saving up money to buy an industrial machine, or we're saving up money to buy a new mobile phone. And I asked them, I said, oh, what do you know saving your money for? And they have this system where they, a committee system. And I was surprised at what they were spending on, but what they see in their workplace is what usually they want, because they know that what advantages is getting them. So once you've got a phone, you've connected to the internet, you've got a connection to the rest of the world, you can look up whatever design or style you want, or whatever information you need, you've got it there.
Yeah.
So some of our niche viewers will not know what the committee system is.
The committee system is like you take a loan from a bank. Now, this is very common in Pakistan. I think it's common in most of the Asian countries, where a group of people, say, be it housewives or working, they put a certain amount of money together. Say, for example, you've got, say, $100, and there are 10 people. So 1 month, you've got $1,000, which one of the person will use to buy whatever expensive thing they want to buy. But they, for 10 months, will carry on paying $100. Now, this is without any interest. So you're kind of taking a loan from each other without paying any interest.
And that gives you a chance to buy some big ticket item, which will hopefully spin off into...
which you wouldn't probably be able to buy. You're paying for it yourself, but you've got the money together. Right. And it works. I mean, people, shopkeepers definitely all over Pakistan, they work on that because they're very cash strapped when you're trying to buy your wholesale stuff. So in businesses, they do it in large quantities. Now, I was just saying a small amount, but it's like thousands of dollars or pounds or rupees, whatever currency you would like to say. They use the committee system to buy stock. And so they're paying for it every month or every day. Sometimes you have a daily committee system as well.
Gotcha. We have a question here. From Salma Tufail again. Which aspect of your business has required you to be most creative?
I think the management side of it all. And that is where I've always liked any form of design, creativeness in the sewing and the any type of artwork. But I think the actual running of the business, the operations, the management, what type of software I need, how I can implement it, how I can use it for advantage. I think that's where I would say I spent most of my time creative time into it. So you've got to make it interesting as well. At the same time, marketing aspect of it is also very creative.
And do you enjoy, for me, when I'm programming, let's say, or at least thinking about it, I like being consumed by the ideas that I get about what I'm going to do next. When I'm not thinking about it, or when there's a void, I I'm bored basically, and nothing for my mind to consume. Do you enjoy like, and as an entrepreneur,
Yes,
sometimes,
Yes.
and as an
yes,
entrepreneur, you have to
definitely.
constantly think about it sometimes just to make sure you're always on the right track and going the right direction. Do you enjoy the
It might
being
be
consumed
genetic.
by your, it might be genetic, yeah, maybe. Do you enjoy the
Definitely.
consumption?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I dream a lot about what I'm doing
Yeah,
and what I'm
yeah,
what I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to get the things working. And I mean, it's always about new projects.
right.
It's all about new projects.
And Anika, you were going to ask something before I.
I was going to talk about how in African countries they've started using phones for instead of um currency. And so I'm wondering, is there a trend in
What
Pakistan
do you mean by that? They
to,
trade.
Like in
what I
China
mean
as
is they're
well,
using,
like Venmo.
maybe Daniel can elaborate.
Like instead of using actual cash, they're using their
Oh,
phones to transfer money and
right,
make payments.
right.
Are
Okay.
they doing that kind of thing in Pakistan where they're primarily using
Yes,
their mobile
yes.
phone?
They are using it definitely for money, for banking, for everything. I mean, for paying bills. For recently, I said to my the manager that electricity bill, and I was imagining like it was about 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, where you had to stand in a line to pay the bills. And he came back and said, "Oh, I paid the bill." And I said, "How did you do it?" He said, "Through my mobile."
Hmm.
And I was kind of, oh, that's new. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised that it was possible. But yes, he'd paid the electricity bill. So yes, it's being used for a lot of, I mean, it's not just for communication or internet or whatever. They're also for practical,
So are
payments.
there any financial apps that are being like Venmo or something, or where there's money exchange?
Mobilink. Yes, there is.
Mobilink?
Mobilink.
Yeah.
So in my previous job, my previous manager was from China, and I forget which region, but she was mentioning that um, your fruit vendors and people off the street are now, if as long as they have a mobile phone, they have their own cash register where they can more easily accept payment, which
They
is
have the I think it's an Alibaba
it's another
app,
Alibaba thing
yeah.
app. Yeah, so I imagine that's similar in other developing countries like
Mm,
Pakistan.
mm. Yes, they can. And people do. A lot of them send money throughout using apps to send money to each other. And then same as what you call it, buying tickets when you're traveling, getting the Uber. There's a cream system there.
Right.
There's a lot of progress using the mobile phone,
With the
definitely.
rickshaws as well. I think they have like an Uber.
Rickshaws.
Yeah.
We need to get more fuel efficient rickshaws and less pollutant ones. Electric ones. Ooh, that'd be cool. Uh, so looks like we have about 5 minutes here. So if there's anything else on anyone's mind, um,
Or we can
feel
end it. You don't
feel
have to
free.
feel
No, we
fill
need to fill
the.
we
You
need
don't
to
have
fill the
to.
hour.
So no, we do have next week's
What?
announcement.
What's next week's
Yes, who's
announcement?
coming next week?
Well, we don't have anyone coming next week. A chapter from my book will be read at the San Jose Museum of Art, and so we'll try and um, be
Live stream
live
it.
from
Yeah,
there.
well,
Ooh,
and again, that probably
never
won't
mind.
happen because I don't have the data plan to support that kind of bandwidth. But
Maybe they have Wi-Fi.
yeah, well,
We'll have a
yeah,
recording.
depends. But yeah, we'll have a recording for
You
sure.
can
Oh,
take a
that's
I
true.
video,
could
yeah,
do a
recording.
Facebook
Yes,
Live.
yes, you can take a recording and show it, can't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's true. So that's
We'll
happening.
work something out.
That's happening next week, Sunday. Is that
That
correct?
is happening next week, Sunday.
Okay.
and we're reaching out to other guests.
Yes.
So of
Can you
our
tell
viewers,
what's going to happen during the whole presentation? Whatever, are you going to give
at the
us sort of an
museum,
outline, yes, of what
there are
what we're looking?
14 other writers,
Mm-hmm.
and their work will be presented in a dramatic form. And my chapter, The Shrine of Sai Makianwala, will be presented at in a dramatic form.
We will be looking out for
And
that.
we should have some Witty Banter t-shirts there.
Yes, so if you're in the area, feel free to come by and you can get a free t-shirt from us. And if you're not in the area, fly in. It's worth it. Um,
And
any
we'll have a book bag.
any social media plugs or websites that you would like our viewers to check you out at, and I can include them in the description of this video if you don't have them on the top of your
This
head
is a
right now.
question for you, Afshan.
Yes, design, style, pattern making.
No, but which video? Which
I meant
websites
like what's your
of
website
yours?
URL? Do you have an Instagram account that people can go
House of Subani,
house at
houseofsubani.com,
.com?
and
Okay,
we've got, yes, lailpurkotor.com. So those two websites we've got. One is a brand. Lailpur Couture is a brand which we are at the moment selling, and House of Subani is a manufacturing and designing.
gotcha. I'll have to get the exact spelling of at least the second URL, but I can do that off the air, and I'll include it in the video description. Okay, well, if that is all, then thank you, viewers and listeners, and until next time, toodaloo.
Bye.